Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's announcement related to accessibility. Bonjour.
Welcome, everyone, and welcome to today's related press conference on accessibility.
Honorable Jean-Claude Damour, Minister of Post-Secondary Education and Training, and Ms. Haley Flero, Chair of the Accessibility Advisory Board. Les porte-parole aujourd'hui sont...
This morning's speakers are in the following order. The Honorable Jean-Claude Damour, Minister of Post-Secondary Education and Training, and Haley Flero, Chair of the Accessibility Advisory Board.
Céder la parole à la ministre.
Before leaving the mic to the minister, please ensure that you deactivate your mics.
I would like to ask everyone to ensure their microphones are placed on mute. Minister, Monsieur le Ministre.
Matin à vous tous. Thank you all for today. This is a very important day for New Brunswickers. Merci à vous tous.
Thank you, everyone, for being here this morning. This is a very important day for New Brunswickers.
I want to thank Haley Flero, Chair of the Accessibility Advisory Board, for joining me to share our next vital steps towards a more accessible province for all. And I would like also to mention, that we have a few persons with us also this morning from the Accessibility Advisory Board also. Mr. Randy Dickinson, thank you very much to be with us. And also we have employees of the Accessibility Office, Nicole Desaulniers and Melissa Candy, who are also with us today. In June of last year, New Brunswick established the Accessibility Act, which set clear rules to make our province more accessible. That legislation aims to identify, remove, and prevent barriers so that everyone can participate fully where they live, work, learn, and play.
New Brunswick has one of the highest rates of disabled people in Canada, and this rate continues to increase. Amongst other things, people are faced with barriers without identifying as disabled.
In making New Brunswick more inclusive for all, but we are still moving forward. This brings me to why we are all gathered here today. As the minister in charge of making New Brunswick more accessible, I'm excited to be here this morning to officially release New Brunswick's first ever strategic plan on accessibility. En tant que ministre chargé
As minister responsible for making New Brunswick more accessible, I'm excited to be here this morning to officially release New Brunswick's first ever strategic plan on accessibility.
notre feuille de route.
This plan will be our roadmap to make New Brunswick more accessible. It will be the first of a number of many measures that we will undertake to make sure that New Brunswick is more inclusive for all.
To a more accessible New Brunswick, and we will be the first of many steps we take over the next few years to make New Brunswick more inclusive to everyone. This strategy lays out a plan for how government will work with New Brunswickers who experience barriers in their everyday life, and with all sectors to achieve the goal of a more accessible New Brunswick by 2040. This plan, spanning the next 5 years, has 3 goals: to work with all sectors to identify and remove barriers, to create a strong culture of accessibility, and to develop and enforce accessibility standards.
This plan will complete our efforts as we continue to make progress and that we continue to have discussions to raise awareness and to implement a culture based on accessibility. Thanks to this plan, New Brunswickers will continue to have the opportunity to provide their comments and to identify barriers and to contribute to a New Brunswick that is more inclusive.
By example, and recognize that an accessible New Brunswick takes all of us working together. We will be creating resources to help build capacity to identify barriers and make accessibility improvements. We will also be working with the Accessibility Advisory Board and its advisory committees to develop regulations and establish minimum accessibility requirements related to information and communications, employment, and the built environment and other priority areas mentioned in the Act. Publishing a strategic plan every 5 years is a legislative requirement under the Accessibility Act and will help us reach the goal of becoming a more accessible province. Une province
A province that is more accessible will benefit all New Brunswickers on many fronts, socially, economically, and culturally. Accessibility allows disabled people, seniors, and anybody else that faces barriers to better participate in community life, whether it's about installing accessibility ramps, elevators, creating more accessible websites, offering interpretation services in sign language. Accessibility is about ensuring that everyone can participate fully. Accessibility can also stimulate local economies, encourage tourism, and reinforce community links.
all of us, and we will be significant and complex undertaking that will involve work from government and many stakeholders and community partners. But it is possible. Now the government is looking for input from New Brunswickers through surveys, focus groups, community meetings, and submissions from individual, organizations, and government at all levels. More information on how to take part in these is available at www.gnb.ca/accessibility. Le gouvernement sollicite l'avis des Néo-Brunswickois au
New Brunswick would like to have input from New Brunswickers through surveys, focus groups, community meetings, and submissions from individuals, organizations, and governments at all levels. For more information on how to take part in this process, it is available on www.gnb.ca/accessibility.
continues. I encourage all New Brunswickers to think about what they can do, big or small, to help remove barriers and make New Brunswick more accessible. This will only enhance our efforts. J'encourage tous les Néo-Brunswickers
I would like to encourage all New Brunswickers to think about what they can do, big or small, to help remove barriers and make New Brunswick more accessible. This will only enhance our efforts.
remind us, for people with disabilities, barriers can be more than physical. Attitudes can be the greatest barrier of all. This is all about moving forward, and I cannot wait to see what this brings to New Brunswick. This is an amazing place to work, study, and play, and ensuring accessibility will only make it better. Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Merci. C'est un honneur d'être
It's an honor for me to be here with the minister.
presents New Brunswick's first plan on accessibility. C'est un jour historique d'être ici aujourd'hui.
It's a historic day to be here as he presents New Brunswick's first plan on accessibility.
Second highest rate of disability in Canada at 35.3% of our population. And that data does not capture those living in long-term care facilities or living in our First Nation communities. So we know the number is much higher. Advances in human rights, inclusion, medical care, and rehabilitation do not guarantee in New Brunswick that people with a disability will have good health or a good quality of life. Many face barriers due to poverty, a shortage of home support workers, lack of access to physical activities, poor employment prospects, and difficulty accessing post-secondary education. Furthermore, the lack of accessible housing, accessible transportation, and inaccessible buildings and communities compound these problems, adversely impacting health and quality of life. This plan is a roadmap to change that. As the daughter of a woman who lived her life with a disability, this plan is public and personal. It gives me hope that no other family will have difficulty accessing the services and support they need when they need it. It gives me hope that the stigmatization of those with a disability will end. It gives me hope that children in schools will have access to adapted sport and recreation equipment so they can play alongside their peers. It gives me hope that students with a disability will not have to turn down admission to post-secondary education institutions because they're not accessible. It gives me hope that those who need accessible housing can find it. Accessibility is a right, not a privilege. Thank you, Minister, and the Accessibility Office for your leadership. We have a fantastic team leading this. Let's get going on the plan. Thank you. Merci.
Je tiens à remercier tous nos invités.
I'd like to thank all of our guests.
Questions from members of the media. Each reporter will have one question and a follow-up. You have the right to pose your question in the official language of your choice. Nous allons maintenant.
We will now proceed to questions from journalists. Each journalist will have a question and a follow-up question. You can ask your questions in the official language of your choice.
BC.
Thanks, Bruce. When are we going to see regulations? Obviously, its strategic plan is great, but when are we going to see the regulations that are actually going to force changes in ensuring greater accessibility?
You know, I think that the first element, we need to create awareness, and I think the announcement today, it's a really good step in that direction. There's also a reason why we have an advisory group. I mean, it's not government who's deciding what is best. We have that group who will work with the government. They will present to us a recommendation that we will evaluate, and then we will be able to continue with the regulation. I mean, this is very important to take the time to listen to the people who have concern and who can help us better, making sure that we can create a culture of accessibility in the province. And it's an ongoing process. You know, as it was mentioned, it's a roadmap. You know, it's the first step after the law, after the bill was approved, and the office be created, and the advisory group also. So now we just want to make sure that we're working hard to achieve goals, and the advisory committee will be able to help us making sure that we are doing the right thing.
Haley, I mean, what would you say really changes for people living with disabilities with this today? Like what's the level of importance of this strategic plan?
Well, I can tell you from my emails that people are watching and waiting for it. The legislation was significant. It wasn't broad legislation. It committed to 8 pillars of regulatory standards that people with a disability wanted and want to see develop. And so the roadmap, the plan that the minister is presenting today, you know, we've already prioritized as advisory board the 3 first advisory committees that will come out of the gate. Recruitment for the first one will start shortly. And what we heard a lot from people is guidelines, weren't enough. They wanted to see regulatory standards, and that's the roadmap is going to make that happen. And there's a high level of engagement. And I can tell you from, having the privilege to chair the board, there's a passion. People are feeling heard, and we're seeing our recommendations in this plan come to light.
Alexandre
Boudreau, Acadie Nouvelle. Are there targets for accessibility that you would like to attain with this strategic plan? Percentage of infrastructure? Are there targets? The reality of what we'd like to attain, like I mentioned, is to discuss with the stakeholders and to have a culture of accessibility and to also implement measures. There isn't necessarily in a percentage number, but the objective is to make New Brunswick accessible for all. We have to work towards that. All of the work that we will be doing with the advisory group will help us to work on the realities that we have to implement. certainly the ultimate goal is that from now on, when there are organizations, businesses, we start thinking about it when we want to start a new building or a new project, to make sure that it's accessible for all and not just for some. And those are the first steps. And as you've seen, and as I mentioned, this is an ongoing process. It's not something that can happen overnight. There's much work to be done, but we want to ensure that we move towards a better future and to have a more accessible New Brunswick in 2040. But how do we define whether or not we've attained accessibility without targets? What would you like to achieve? What we would like to achieve, as I mentioned, is to make sure that New Brunswick is more accessible for everyone. The advisory committee will offer recommendations following all of their consultations. They will formulate recommendations, we'll analyze those recommendations, and then to be able to transform them into regulations in order to implement them. Even if we identify a specific percentage, what we would like to achieve is accessibility for all.
To Brian Tate with Country 94. Mr. Tate.
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Barbara Simpson with Post Media.
Thank you. My first question is does the strategic plan have any key performance measurements? I guess, how do you measure success of this plan? You know, sometimes strategic plans get made and they sit on a shelf. I guess, how do you measure success? Is there going to be, let's say, for example, a number of, public housing units, for example, that you're hoping to have accessible, or any type of regulation?
Thank you very much for the question. As you mentioned, sometime it may happen that strategic plan, it's beautiful, people are reading it, but what is the outcome? In this case, it's not that we have only created a strategic plan. We have also make sure also that we're having an advisory group, a board that will present to us their recommendations. So instead of being the government who's making decision, we will have the group who will work with communities, work with stakeholders, and making sure that the recommendation they are sending to us, it's to improve accessibility in the province.
Could I have Haley answer that question as well?
I agree with the minister. I also, as chairing the advisory board, know how important it is for us to develop key performance indicators and metrics to be able to evaluate the plan. And that work isn't being taken lightly. It's going to be a focus as we move into the coming months to make sure that there's some measurable indicators. A good indicator is that the regulations get developed, but I agree, how many new people with a disability get employed, how many people with a disability are reporting that there are increased accessible spaces, how many modifications are made, how many plain language materials does government develop for their communications. So that an evaluation framework and performance indicators are something that the board will be recommending to government.
And just very quickly here, Minister, I wanted to ask you, while I have you, about the immigration cuts that were announced by the federal government. I guess, what are you looking for from the federal government at this point in time? They've indicated they're going to take a regional approach to these cuts.
You will remember that since the last year, I have always mentioned to the federal government that the one-size-fits-all formula, it's not working for all, or maybe for some. And New Brunswick, we want to be recognized that, we have our own need. We have discussed with the federal government on many occasions, the budget highlight the national decision of the government. For sure, we will continue to have discussion. We have not received yet all the information for our province. We will, from my understanding, we will receive them in a really near future. And then we will be able to provide more details. But I think there's still have good opportunities within the announcement that was made earlier this week about immigration, the PNP program. We'll see how we can work with that portion, how we can modulate the PNP and the AIP. the question of the international students too. So you know, I have advocate for the last year. I mean, we have been successful on many front, and I will continue to make sure that the need of New Brunswick, our businesses, you know, our post-secondary education institution and groups are well heard by the federal government. I will continue that and making sure that we will have our share as we were able to have for 2025.
Laura Brown, CTV.
Haley, I know that you've been working on something like this for a long time. I want to know if you finally feel like this is the epitome, like this is something that will make a true difference finally.
Personally and professionally, I do. The legislation was a significant victory for people with a disability because it has teeth. It has very clear pillars identified of where people want to see the change and the regulatory standards. And the office that has been set up is best in class. I've worked with government as a community partner for 28 years, and the passion, the research, the working with national partners is incredible. And, you know, we've got the right leadership in the minister and the department because they've been highly committed from day one. So the next step is these regulatory standards, and that's what I encourage people with a disability to watch and to put your hand up to join these advisory committees, because we're going to have subject matter experts, people with a disability included, disability organizations, you know, experts in the field, government experts involved in these committees, so we develop the best possible regulatory standards.
For those who may question the need, you know, they may think, haven't we come so far? Walk us through maybe some of the things regular New Brunswickers don't think about that a third of New Brunswickers have to face every day.
It's, you know, working daily in this work, disability organizations probably see it more than the general public. So, you know, yesterday I spoke to a mom that waited 3 years to get a psychoeducational assessment for her daughter, and she didn't do well in school and didn't graduate. That's too long. And so accessibility standards aren't just about the built environment, they're about access to services, timely access to supports. And so, you know, I still see daily children getting left behind on the playground because we invest in playgrounds federally, provincially. I'm not pointing fingers, and we don't include accessible components, so kids get left behind. Communication, you know, it was during the recent pandemic, it was the first time New Brunswick actually utilized interpreters, and thank you for the interpreters that are actually interpreting online today to ensure that everyone has access to important information. So there's a lot of roadblocks. It's not about pointing fingers. It's just we've worked so hard as stakeholders in New Brunswick to advance it. And this was an opportunity to say, you know what, we really need teeth on accessibility, and the regulation is going to be the culture change to help us do that.
Thank you. David Gordon, Coach, New Brunswick Media Co-op. David Gordon, New Brunswick Media Co-op.
Oh, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly. Thank you.
Yes, thanks. So I've heard from accessibility advocates who have called for universal design in housing construction, particularly in New Brunswick housing builds. Any comment on that? Will this strategy address universal design in NB housing?
This is one of my favorite areas to talk about. The minister knows that. Universal design is so critical in learning and built environment. And the challenge we experience in New Brunswick, we actually have a really good barrier-free regulation building code in New Brunswick that we've pulled out of 3.8 of the National Building Code to make New Brunswick's better. The challenge is there's still a lot of education that needs to be done about good universal design. There's a lot of myths that it's more expensive when all the research shows that you have the right designer, had the right architect, you can design something that's beautiful, universally designed at no extra cost. And New Brunswick is certainly one of those provinces that's experiencing the issue of poor universal design over the years. A lot of aging infrastructure, a lot of inaccessible buildings. So the regulatory standard that's been prioritized in the next few years on built environment will be taking a look at how universal design can be incorporated into that regulation, because New Brunswick has great guidelines on universal design, but guidelines are an option. So we need more education to educate designers, contractors, et cetera, about how good universal design can cost the same, can be beautiful, and it's sustainable design for New Brunswick.
I wonder if the minister could comment about NB housing in particular. Will there be changes to the standards by which NB housing units will be built?
I don't have a specific comments about that, but as I indicated earlier, the advisory group will provide us with recommendation that we will take serious look at it to transform them in regulatory in the law, and this is something that we need to do. And if I can add a little bit, not specifically about housing, but when there's a construction site or modification, we need to keep in mind. And my objective is really to make sure that in the future we won't talk about accessibility. It will be natural for people to think about it, and when they do something, like if there's a modification or renovation on a building, the sidewalk is not blocked, making sure that people who's having a wheelchair or any other type of equipment, and they need to be able to access a building. We need to think about it up front, and not because the objective, it's not that the regulation will be there to just to remind people to do it. We need to make sure that accessibility will be natural, and we'll make sure that we'll be able to improve the quality of life of everyone, and making sure that each and everyone will be able to contribute more to our society.
Anna Mandan, Global TV.
Hi. Haley, I have a question for you. I'm wondering if there's a specific measure in this plan that you feel will be particularly impactful, or that you're most passionate about.
Oh, that's hard to pick for me, but I love everything about this plan, but some of the things that stand out to me is the commitment to get regulatory standards moving, and those advisory committees, and getting those experts together. This will be the first time ever in New Brunswick that people have gathered around a table to look at a regulatory standard on communications and information that will impact things like this press conference. The other, I'm picking two. The component on education and awareness is there actually is amazing practices out there. There's really good people that want to be more inclusive in design of programs, services, and products, but they need support, they need training, they need awareness of how to do it the right way. So one of the things I love about the Accessibility Office is right since day one, the office has identified that if we're not educating and raising awareness, we'll probably be standing still, because it has to go hand in hand with this work.
Thank you. Minister, I have a question for you going back to immigration. I know you mentioned universities, and that's been a focus even before this budget. Are you specifically concerned about universities, how they might be impacted by having less international students?
I'm always concerned. I'm always concerned of any cuts, and because the need of our workforce in New Brunswick, it's so important and major within the next 10 years. The reality of each provinces and territories are not all the same. Our own reality, we will need 136,000 new employees within the next 10 years. So, it's in percentage, it's huge compared to our population. So we need to look at how we can manage that. The birth rate in New Brunswick, it's not very high. So, and for anyone who have a baby right now, that baby won't be working before another 20, 21, 22 years. And so we need to find people to come in New Brunswick to work. So we will have people living here, and our young population will go to take some education at on the post-secondary level, and they will be able to join the workforce. So then, what is the other options? It's also like the domestic immigration with people living elsewhere in the country. But then we need economic immigrants to be able to cover another percentage. And also, we need to, there's a good opportunity to have, having students in our colleges and universities here in New Brunswick, knowing how New Brunswick work, our economy, how the social life is. It's really the right person to have to be able to enter in the workforce. So yes, any cuts or any modification may create a huge impact on our future. But I still thinking that positively that the federal was able, we were able during the last year to work in collaboration to increase the level of people coming in New Brunswick, and I'm sure in the next weeks and months we will continue to do so. But hopefully, my objective is really that the federal government stop to have a one-size-fits-all formula and recognizing the need of each and every one. So then we will be able to have a better future.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
Today's news conference. Voilà ce qui mène fait à notre conférence d'après.
That's the end of our press conference here today. Thank you very much.